You're listening to the Valley Current.
Yeah, what number of hours do you actually get out of that? It's actually under a million hours. It's 24 hours to a day, and you end up with in a good 100-year life less than a million hours. And for a while, I've been talking about this idea of growing your 7 essences, which is a thought I've had for a while, that if you really look at what's important in what you are able to do for yourself, you really should be working on your HQ, which is your health quotient, your IQ, which is your intelligence quotient. You all certainly have high intelligence quotients, or you wouldn't have been able to get into Stanford. Your EQ, which is your emotional intelligence quotient. Your PQ, which is kind of your passion quotient. Your AQ, which is your ambition quotient. Most people focus on the next one, which is FQ, sometimes called financial quotient. More people more generally like to call it freedom quotient. And then your CQ, which is your consciousness quotient. Some people like to call it your community quotient, or your creativity quotient, which is soulful and spiritual. So I've been saying to my daughters for a while now, they're married, but when they were dating back, decades ago, now they're married with kids. I'm a grandfather with 5 grandchildren. And the latest one literally was born just a few months ago. So they laugh at me about this. But when they were teenagers, that's how long I've been thinking about this stuff, I said, you should be thinking about trying to match with someone that has also grown their essences and that has a good health quotient, a good intelligence quotient, a good emotional intelligence, and so on. And they laughed and said, you can never find someone that has all 7 of these, and ultimately you'll have to settle. And we would sometimes play the game of, well, how many people out of 100 people that you meet are actually going to have these pairs of characteristics? Like, they're going to be sane and sober, they're going to be smart and savvy, they're going to be sensitive and supportive. These pairs, all the way right up to soulful and spiritual. And they said, you're just not going to find, and of course, this becomes a lesson about you yourself have to be working on these 7. And, this was me back when I was first in law school. This is what I looked like. You can kind of compare what's happened over time. You do lose a lot of your hair. You hopefully don't lose your smile. But that was my first bank account back in the day that I was at UCLA in Los Angeles. The savings bank in Santa Monica, California is out of business now, but they used to give you this card with a picture on it. It was not a smart card. It was just a plastic identification card that was associated to a bank account. So the 7 essences is driven around Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and this idea that I think right now, all of our basic needs and most of our psychological needs are pretty much met. And we're at this top layer, and we have to look at what we can do to fulfill this top layer in a way that allows ourselves to have the greatest degree of success with our human potential. So we've been through these numbers. It's not a lot. It gets even less when you think about sleep taking out about a third. Right? If you do get 8 hours of sleep, I think most people don't. 8 hours of other activities associated with having your life, like feeding yourself and caring for yourself, brushing your teeth, doing all the hygiene things that we do. And then maybe if you're lucky, you might actually get 8 hours of actual thinking time. That is the time that you spend actually thinking about what it is that you're going to engage in to carry out your human potential. So conceptually, it's not really a million hours in terms of your time to become a thought leader in the area of expertise that you engage in. And of course, thinking is many different things for many different people. For some people, it's about inspiring others. For other people, it's about coming up with great concepts. For some people, it's about inventing. You can break that time up even further, but it's not a lot of time. And if you say, well, how many years do you actually get? Because you take up a lot of time preparing for a profession or preparing in some ways. Maybe you're lucky getting maybe 40 years. If you're lucky, I'm actually going on 50 years of being in the law and business profession. Most lawyers fall out of it a lot sooner. So, maybe you get 40 years, maybe you get 50 years. I don't know, Sabrina, if you've got the data about how people are looking at their work span, but this would be the time to kind of plug in some of those numbers. Do you have some data from the survey that we've done here at the last minute, for which there is going to be raffle?
I do.
What do you see as the numbers this year? And we can probably compare them to the previous survey that we've done.
I put this graphs in the chat.
Oh, the graphs are actually in the chat. Okay. Let's see if we can, you can take control of the screen to take them back, but do you have some numbers? Why don't you just tell us the numbers just generally? And we'll publish these and provide them to the class afterwards and compare them to the previous versions, because that probably be the best way for everyone to understand just how this data is changing over time. In general, historically, people have thought about it as getting longer over time. So I'm looking at this. Okay, so if I open this Google Doc, is it going to work on my screen? Let's see what happens. So 2023, people thought, I don't know what the actual numbers are. The graphs say over 80, lifespan about 85, maybe 90. By the way, on lifespan, and we'll generate graphs that give you details. It looks like it's a little higher in 2026 than it was in 2023. I can tell you right now that the expectation over the next 10 years is that about, in America, at least in the United States, there's about 14.9% of individuals that are still alive and are over 80. Americans are over 80 years old, about 15% of the population. The expectation in the next 10 or so years is that it's going to about 30%. It's going to double. People are living longer, and the kind of average age is inching up. Now, we've had some crises here in terms of COVID, and maybe that's stopped, maybe it's over, but pandemics are probably not over. So what is it, 89.7, Sabrina, in real time? 2023 was 89.7, and 2026 is a little higher. 92. Okay, so I'm misreading the graph. So, this is a sample of a class that has a certain age range. So we're doing this in real time, as you can tell, which is okay. But it's inching up, right? It's inching up a little. So if you go to the next one, which is about health span, the numbers are people expected to be at least 81 years of health span in 2023. And in 2026, it's actually lower. Probably not statistically significant. Probably say that's about the same. Probably the lifespan being a little longer is kind of interesting. And then we do brain span, right? So you can kind of think of it as you can stay alive to the age of 92. And these are just averages, right? That you've taken, Sabrina? You just took an average, or are these the medians? These are just averages, right? Yeah, they're average. That's what I thought. So think about it as people think that their brain span will make it to 87.87 years, and their lifespan will be over within maybe 5 years after that, on average, right? And then the interesting part about the work span is this does look statistically significant. People are expecting to work a lot less. And I think there is some historical data that tends to suggest that that's true. I don't know what numbers you would plug into that. It looks like a significant decline from 2023. Now, 2023 was was kind of just at the end of COVID or COVID, people were getting back to work. So maybe there was kind of a different view back then. But, think about it as, you're in a world where people are living longer and they are typically working longer, but I think people have a different attitude towards work and a different attitude towards retirement, and more people are more interested in being able to retire over time. It looks like the chronological ages were about on average the same in general, somewhat over 20 years old, over 20, maybe 25 or so. Biological ages were similar. Sleep actually looks like it's similar. So these are just really interesting comparisons. More exercise per month in this cohort. I don't know what the question was here. Can you remind me what the question was, Sabrina, on mindset? How many hours people spend doing something? What was number 10? During any given month, how many hours do you spend improving your mindset? Mindset's defined as the attitude that determines how you interpret and respond to challenging situations, embracing the challenge versus running from it. Yeah, that's kind of my life in terms of embracing challenge, but I think that's fundamentally what you have to do. So there's a couple of other slides here in terms of skill set, similar questions, tool sets. It's interesting that the numbers are lower on tool sets because we're in an AI world now, and I think people are spending, far more time in working on tools. And if we had to redo the survey, we'd probably ask people, and maybe you can put in the chat, what are the three top AI tools that you're using? If people can just put in the chat, a couple of lines about which are the top three AI tools. Obviously, most people are aware of ChatGPT. Claude exists, Perplexity. There's so many different products. And in fact, at one point I sent to Sabrina, instead of doing an introduction on myself, sent her an AI version describing who is Jack Russo and what is his relationship to Foundation for Creativity and Dispute Resolution and this Healthy 100 Years initiative. And we did 7 different tools. I don't know, Sabrina, did you send that to people or did they not see that email? Yeah, you can send it afterwards just to see how the 7 different tools. Yeah, I use 7 because we have subscriptions to all 7 and paid subscriptions just to see what they would say. They each said different things. The things they said were all good, but they really did say different things about me that to some degree tells you something about how these tools operate with their large language models. They're not going to give you the same answer in all cases. So in general, the summary is we're in a world where people expect to live longer. They expect to have a longer health span. They expect to have a longer brain span. That's all good news. But they're actually spending probably less thinking time. That's the suggestion from these last 3 pieces of data about mindset, skill set, and tool set, is maybe there's lesser activities going on intellectually. And maybe that means there's more activities going on with exercise. Now, I like to combine, just to give you a life hack I've discovered after all these years of taking different bar exams and so on, and various exams to get certifications that I've gotten over the course of the many years that I've been practicing law, going now on almost 4.5 decades, is basically get yourself a set of earphones. The ones I like to use look like this. They're these Shocks brand. Not that I'm pitching them, but I found them to be best because they can go over your ears and listen to books on tape from Audible or to podcasts that are really informative, of which there are some, while you do your exercise. And indeed, you can also use tools that I would recommend. For example, I think everyone absolutely should have a Notebook LM account. That's a Google product that's available for free where you can collect notes. So if we could do a poll I don't think we can easily do it. Can we, Sabrina? Can we do a poll that asks people, um, are they aware of Notebook LM and have they actually actively used it? Because boy, if I had Notebook LM back in the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, when I was doing various studies and getting various certifications, I'd love to have all the various texts that I was reading, all the various papers I was writing, all the various presentations that I've given loaded into a tool like Notebook LM that creates your own sort of small language model for what is your intellectual life. And ultimately, I think that's what we will all have. We will all have some version of Notebook LM. So let's see, is there anything else that I need to? You can ask, oh, yeah, you can ask people live. Go ahead, Serena, why don't you ask them live to raise their hands as to how many in the class, how many people in total do we have in the class, and what percentage would say that they're using Notebook LM? Just three out of a total of how many?
I'm like 20.
20. So if there's any takeaway at all, is like everyone should have a smartphone. I'm sure 20 out of 20 people raise their hands. And probably if we asked how many people have two smartphones, probably more than half of the class has two smartphones. And the reason I'm going to say it is this presentation, with a lot of introductory material you just heard, is really how to use AI to help you improve your seven essences. So I'm going to take the next 10 or 15 minutes to go over this in some detail, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. But what I did was I used a tool. In this case, it's something available from Google that's called Gemini, which is baked into Notebook LM. So Notebook LM is like the repository, and Gemini is the engine. So think of Notebook LM as kind of the tractor trailer truck that carries all the data, and Gemini is the engine that kind of runs the truck, and that's that store of information that's on it. And within Gemini, there's a tool that's called Nano Banana, kind of a goofy name if you ask me, but they decided to do that. And Nano Banana enables you to build these beautiful graphs. And I'm going to show you the organization of this in a second, but I want to sort of jump to the beginning of this, because the beginning of this is back in the 80s, things were very mechanical, and the work that you did was typically associated with a bunch of hardware. And now we're in the 2020s, and soon enough we'll be in the 2030s. We're already in 2026. And really, what you could argue all of these AI tools are doing is they're enabling a collection of minds to work together to improve the way knowledge is stored, managed, retrieved, and taken advantage of very quickly. So every time you log into ChatGPT, every time you log into Claude, which is an Anthropic product, every time you log into Gemini, which is a Google product, every time you log into Copilot, which is a Microsoft product. I mean, the only player that's absent from this field right now is Apple, and they'll probably introduce a product shortly. People said they were going to buy Perplexity, but that doesn't appear to be in the cards. But every time you connect up with one of these providers, you're effectively connecting up to millions, if not tens of millions, and perhaps, even billions of minds that have provided information that is now being taken advantage of by the AI engine. And that collection is enabling hardware and software to extend your brain. So think about it for a second in terms of these seven essences, because this is the way I've set up my AI system, my personal AI system, which is I actually want AI to help me track my health quotient. So within Notebook LM, I have a folder that's called HQ. The two sort of descriptors that we used in the presentation was called sane and sober. I add the word strong. I want to remain sane and sober and strong, all three, kind of like a three-legged stool, which means I spend 3 hours of time doing the exercises I've described. And in today, there was also a half hour of actually lifting weights while listening to a book on tape. So I try to do 2-for-1s where I get some additional advantage beyond just health quotient into intelligence quotient, because you become a smarter person over time. You become a more savvy person over time. And the third descriptor might be you become a more strategic person over time. As you listen to books on tapes, you listen to authors and lecturers who you think are pretty good and are providing you with the information that you're lacking. And you yourself become someone that can dictate your own notes, whether it's for exams or for papers you're writing, for anything else, because Notebook LM will take those notes and actually turn them into a podcast. And the three people that know how to use Notebook LM hopefully will become mentors to those that are interested in learning more and want to do some hands-on stuff. But think of it as you're building this set of files about yourself. And in theory, you can do this. I didn't do it when I met Dr. Lee Suter, who's my lovely wife, who has helped me put this presentation together. She's here listening to this, and she's very appreciative. But you could build a file on the person that you're maybe thinking might be your life partner. And you can start to understand better how they look at their 7 essences. And I have a theory that in the future, those file folders will become far more valuable and represent your mindset on those 7 very important aspects of being a human that will fundamentally be of great import to anyone that you have any serious relationship with, including, for example, a business partner, potentially even an employer, and certainly close friends, and certainly people that might become life partners. So I've generated this. Unfortunately, AI kind of makes mistakes and it does some hallucination. So it didn't get the labeling right. It's the same idea as the 7 essences. It's the same concept of we're looking to put together a way for people to think about 7 essences where the foundation is health quotient. Without health, you really can't get any of these other essences to work. I mean, look, if you're terribly injured, I don't know that your IQ and your EQ are going to improve, although I think there are some people that find sometimes something that limits your health actually produces larger, better outcomes on other essences. That's kind of a separate topic for a separate day. So ignoring all of the mistakes that were made on the automation of the labeling, think of it as, imagine that AI is helping you build a file folder system of important knowledge that is going to become wisdom for you over time about how your health hopefully is improving, how your intelligence is improving, how your emotional intelligence is improving, and how all the other essences, there are 4 more, PQ, which is your passion quotient, AQ, which is your ambition quotient, FQ, which is your financial quotient or your freedom quotient, or some people call it your fun quotient. And then at the top is CQ, which is your consciousness quotient, which is how are you helping the ultimate evolution of life? Because ultimately we're in a very interesting place in time right now where we are experiencing artificial intelligence that's heading to what's called artificial general intelligence. So AI is becoming AGI, and that to me is a serious transition where everyone needs to actually imagine that they're going to have a co-partner that effectively is a collection of other people's minds that they have access to. And where it kind of takes you to is you're going to have to manage yourself in the best way that you can do it to keep your health to be as positive as possible. And what's going to happen is probably you're going to get a little bit like me, which is I actually wear two different watches. One is the Apple Watch, of course, that's connected to the Apple ecosystem that tells you something about the metrics that Apple collects. But actually, right now, I think Android and Samsung have the better watch for doing the 7 by 24 collection of data that they collect. And ultimately, all that data is going to make its way into that HQ folder and ultimately to probably your medical professionals who are going to flag things that are changing in the wrong direction over time. They should also flag things that are changing in the right direction over time. And the medical profession is going to become very plugged into that sensor data and ultimately is going to pay a lot of attention to that sensor data or the AI system that is looking at that data closely on a daily, if not hour by hour basis, is going to pay a lot of attention to what's going on and to enable these systems to provide a lot more information about what's happening. Now, you could take that same principle and say that AI is going to help with learning. So IQ is going to be self-improving and not necessarily based so much on classes that you attend, because a lot of it's going to be along the lines of what classes do you co-create with the AI system itself. And then layer three, in terms of emotional intelligence, will be what do we learn that makes us better human beings in interacting with other human beings. And you may remember that the pair of terms is sensitive and supportive. I haven't quite come up with the third term. I mean, I'll give people a chance to put in chat what they think the third term should be if we're doing this three-legged stool and now extending what are otherwise these pairs of S words, sane and sober and strong, smart and savvy and strategic. What do you think is sensitive and supportive and the third S term? If anyone's got an idea, but think of it as you're trying to build a structure that people will better understand and that will allow them to be better human beings interacting with other human beings. Now, the interesting part of this is many of the AI systems are trying to build in emotional intelligence to the way in which the AI interacts with you as a human being. So you'll often see ChatGPT or Claude say, that's a really good question. Let me break it down for you. And they'll try to interact with you like they're another human. And that's intentional. That's baked into the system. And Professor James Landy in the D School at Stanford teaches a course that's fundamentally about how to build emotional intelligence into AI systems that are in development at the design school. And for anyone who hasn't visited the design school, and in particular gone to the AI hackathon classes that he holds, where literally people spend the day hacking together a particular vertical application and try to build it with a user interface that's going to work. I would say that would be one of the reasons to spend time at Stanford would be to visit that, because that is part of the future of what's happening with AI. So think of it as we're kind of in a world where over time, AI is going to help us amplify our emotional intelligence and maybe give us feedback along the way. For example, it might say to me that I'm going too fast in this presentation. It might say to me, I've asked Sabrina to do too much and piling onto her all this statistical work that we asked her to do to the end. So I apologize, Sabrina, for doing that to you in such a short period of time. And I appreciate your ambition in trying to get it done in time. And ultimately, it gives you a way to think about how to be a better human being and interacting with other human beings. And that becomes pretty important when you're involved with other people on teams, which is mainly what people do in organizations, whether it's a startup company or a big Fortune 500 company. You have to actually be a good team player to expect to do well in that setting, in either of those settings. So PQ actually started when I was talking to my two daughters back decades ago as passion quotient. It evolved into something more general like purpose quotient, but the original PQ, for those of you who want to know why does this graph appear like two people dancing with then all these brains around it, PQ was really this description of sexy and sensual. And some people say, well, you really can't do that as part of a professional lecture, that you shouldn't be telling people that they should evaluate themselves. Lee's like, yeah, I'm the one who told you that, and you're going off script here. But it is true to say that if you are trying to match with the right life partner, typically PQ is pretty important. And I think there is a third term, like sexy, sensual, and seductive is the third term that I come into. I haven't figured out the one that needs to be done on EQ, but on PQ, I think it's sexy, sensual, and seductive. And you have AI to help you. I think AI will help you improve even in this aspect of your life. And the reason for it is there's a lot of contribution in the literature, a tremendous amount of contribution in the marriage literature, because the divorce rates are so high. Almost globally, they're high. In the U.S., they're terribly high. Like the divorce rates right now for first marriages is over 50%. The divorce rates for second marriages is over 55%. The divorce rate for third marriages is over 60%. The largest population segment getting divorced are people in their 70s that often have been married for many years. It's like an amazing story. I mean, there's a footnote to this. We have two sets of friends on the same street where we live, and both couples who are really both at retirement age are getting divorced. Like, it's shocking, and what the disruption is for families, for kids, and so on. So studying this is somewhat important, and seeing whether AI can help is something that makes sense. And I do think this idea of a tool like Notebook LM collecting information that's relevant becomes quite important. So then layer 5 is this idea of ambition quotient, and it's this two descriptors I call secure and self-aware. And for most people, it's like climbing Mount Everest. It's like getting to the point where you carry out some mission that some people run marathons, some people swim, some people do other things. For some people, it's all about business ambition. But you have to build a sense of being secure and self-aware. And I think the third S term would be self-improving. That is, you're always in this mode of self-improving. You're monitoring what you're doing. So if you're able to run 5 miles and you can extend it, like today, I actually put another 25 pounds of weight on the gym bars, and I thought, oh man, this is going to be hard, but I was able to do it, and I actually surprised myself. So there was like a self-improving activity at the gym. And those metrics can all be managed and captured and analyzed by AI. And you could think of it as ambition quotient can get to the point where you're actually able to build a dashboard, where the dashboard is going to actually symbolize how AI is helping you to understand all the things that you're trying to do to improve your essences. And it might be that you'll choose a different 7 essences. And I use 7 because it's easy to remember. I mean, there's 7 days a week. There's, lucky 7 on a set of dice. I think basically you're lucky to get 7 hours of thinking in a given day. I mean, for me, the number 7, there's 7 numbers in the phone if you don't count the area code, which years ago didn't matter, but now of course it does. So now it's 10. But for most people, the 7 numbers they remember for a phone are like home and their parents and best friends and so on. But think of it as you can remember 7. And that becomes pretty important. But if you want to add more or you want to choose less, you can do it. This is your system. I'm giving you ways to think about building a philosophy of life that enables you to leverage everything that you learn and everything that you do day to day, month to month, year to year, so that at the end of your life, you feel like your life purpose has been carried out and that you have extended your human potential to the maximum degree possible. And if that happens, then over time, AI will probably end drudgery. That is, it probably will enable you to do many things that you weren't able to do before, enable you to become the thought leader. Okay, so when you get to the top of this, you get to the CQ, consciousness quotient, and AI is going to enable what I say is a new awakened era. And that era is going to lead to mindsets, skill sets, and tool sets all improving over time, with AI enabling this next decade to become something magical from now to say 2035, 2045, 2055. And we're going to see an amazing evolution where the next few decades move us from AI to AGI, where I think it's a much more positive vision for the future, where we're going to see total liberation and far more time where we're doing things that are more creative and less drudgery. So with that, I'll stop here and say we'll get the data to people in terms of the comparative statistics. And if there are questions and people want to send them by email, you could send them to jack@computerlaw.com, JCK @computerlaw, computerlaw.com. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. I mean, hearing your wisdom and how to lead a purposeful life is just, these are things that you can't find in books, and so we really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you having me go off on something that is very experimental, but I am actively experimenting, and I do think a future course will help students organize things in ways that even 10 years from now will still be helpful to them, because they'll have access to all that learning that they collected over the 4 or 5, 6 years, whatever they're spending at Stanford, right through their medical degrees.
Yeah, you're giving us some good ideas for future courses. So,
hey, good luck to all of you in finishing your studies and being successful. And I hope some of this rubs off in a way that you look back and say it was worth your hour.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Mike. See you later. Talk to you guys later. Thanks, Sabrina. Thank you so much, Sabrina. Big applause to Sabrina by everyone.
Great.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.